What if some of the most powerful meals in the Bible were never meant to be seen as ordinary? What if the same scriptures people read for spiritual truth were also quietly preserving ancient patterns of nourishment, strength, restoration, and healing wisdom? Most people notice the miracles. They notice the kings, the battles, the prophecies, but they miss the meals, and that is a mistake. Because hidden in scripture are combinations of foods that fed workers, restored travelers, strengthened families, sustained the weak, and carried meaning far deeper than most people realize. These were not random plates on ancient tables. They were practical. They were symbolic. And in many cases, they reveal a wisdom about nourishment that still feels astonishingly relevant today. So today, we are uncovering 10 biblical meals connected to strength, restoration, and healing symbolism. And stay with me until the end, because the final meal brings together the very foods God used to describe the goodness of the promised land itself. Lentil stew with bread. We begin with one of the most memorable meals in the entire Bible. In Genesis 25, verses 29 through 34, Esau comes in exhausted from the field, and Jacob is cooking red stew. Verse 34 says, "Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew." Most people remember the birthright, but they miss the meal. That stew was not trivial. It was dense, filling, sustaining food. In the ancient world, lentils were one of the great foods of survival. They stored well, fed families, and restored strength after labor. And that is what makes this meal so powerful. It is the kind of food a tired body actually wants: warm, earthy, dependable, rebuilding. Biblical nourishment is often simple, but never accidental. And from the pot of stew, we move to the table of daily bread. In John 6, verse 9, the boy who comes to Jesus has 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. That detail matters. Not wheat loaves for the wealthy. Barley loaves, the bread of ordinary people. Barley was humble, but sustaining. It was the grain of laborers, travelers, and households that needed dependable food, not luxury. And olive oil appears throughout Scripture as one of the central foods of biblical life. In Deuteronomy 8, verse 8, the Promised Land is described as a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil and honey. Bread and oil together form one of the Bible's clearest pictures of stable provision. Bread for substance, oil for richness. A simple table, but a complete one. And from bread, we move to a meal cooked on the shore. 3. Grilled fish with bread. One of the most intimate meal scenes in Scripture appears in John chapter 21, verses 9 to 13. After the resurrection, Jesus stands on the shore. The disciples come in from the water, and verse 9 says, "They saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread." Then in verse 13, Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. That scene is unforgettable because it is so physical, so simple, so real. Not a feast, not a palace table. Just fish, bread, fire, and fellowship. Fish mattered deeply in the biblical world, especially around Galilee. It fed families, it sustained fishermen. It was familiar, practical, and strength-giving. And this meal reminds us that restoration in the Bible is often embodied. Jesus does not only speak hope, he serves food. And that brings us to one of the most famous food pairings in all of Scripture. 4. Milk and honey. Again and again, the Bible describes the Promised Land as a land flowing with milk and honey. You see it in Exodus 3, verse 8, where God says, "I have come down to rescue them," into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. That phrase appears so often that many people stop hearing it, but they should not, because this was not empty poetry. It was a picture of abundance, nourishment, sweetness, and life that could flourish. One is rich, sustaining, and deeply nourishing. The other is sweet, precious, and life-giving in biblical imagery. Together, this becomes one of the most beautiful food pairings in Scripture. Not all healing looks dramatic. Some of it looks like deep nourishment received slowly. And from milk and honey, we move to a pairing connected to one of the Bible's clearest healing moments. 5. Figs and cakes of raisins. Few foods in Scripture carry such a direct healing association as figs. In 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 7, when King Hezekiah is sick, Isaiah instructs to prepare a poultice of figs. That verse alone makes figs unforgettable. And then in 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 11 and 12, David's men find an exhausted Egyptian servant and give him food. They gave him a piece of cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. That is powerful. Here, food is directly tied to revival and restored strength. Figs and raisins together form the kind of ancient meal that feels both practical and restorative, portable, dense, energizing, and deeply suited to a world where food had to matter. And from fruit that revives, we move to one of the Bible's great ceremonial meals. 6. Lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. In Exodus 12:8, God commands Israel concerning Passover. That same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs, and bread made without yeast. This is one of the most important meals in all of Scripture. Lamb is never just meat in the Bible. It is covenant food. It is deliverance food. It is sacred memory on a plate. The bitter herbs matter too. They remind Israel of suffering, urgency, and what it meant to be brought out. This meal is rich with meaning, strength, obedience, remembrance, and rescue. It is not difficult to see why meals like this stayed in memory for generations. And from this sacred meal, we move to something humbler, but no less powerful. In Ruth chapter 2 verse 14, Boaz invites Ruth to eat with his workers. He says, "Come over here, have some bread, and dip it in the wine vinegar." The verse then says she sat down with the harvesters, and he offered her some roasted grain. That is a remarkable little meal. Bread, vinegar, roasted grain. Simple, but deeply grounded in the world of labor, harvest, and provision. This is the food of ordinary life, the kind of meal that keeps people going through long hours and hard work. It is modest but satisfying, plain but wise. And that is one of the great secrets of biblical meals. They are often humble but deeply intelligent. And that takes us to one of the most beautiful combinations on this list. Pomegranates in Scripture are never casual. They appear in sacred design, beauty, and abundance. In Deuteronomy 8 verse 8, they are named among the signature foods of the Promised Land. It describes a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. In Song of Songs 8 verse 2, the poetry offers spiced wine and the nectar of pomegranates. A grain bowl built around barley or wheat with pomegranate seeds fits beautifully within the biblical world. It is colorful, rich, fertile, full of life. Some meals in Scripture speak of survival. This one speaks of flourishing. And now we come to one of the humblest but strongest meals of all. 9. Bread, fish, and honeycomb. After the resurrection, Jesus asks for something to eat in Luke 24, verses 41 to 43. The passage says, "They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence." Some manuscript traditions also mention honeycomb, and early readers often associated honeycomb with this scene. Whether you emphasize the fish alone or the broader traditional pairing, the point is powerful. Resurrection is grounded in something physical, ordinary, and nourishing. Bread, fish, and sweetness belong to the same biblical world of practical restoration. This is one of the Bible's recurring patterns. God meets people not only through visions and words, but through tables, meals, and tangible provision. And now we come to the final meal, the one that gathers the land itself into a single picture. 10. The 7 foods of the promised land. This final meal comes straight from Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 8, where the land is described with 7 signature foods. A land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. This is not just a list, it is a vision of abundance. Wheat and barley for bread, grapes and figs for sweetness and fruitfulness, pomegranates for richness and beauty, olive oil for nourishment, honey for goodness. Together, these foods form one of the Bible's clearest pictures of a life that can flourish under God's blessing. This is the meal of the land itself, and it is the perfect place to end because it reveals what all the other meals have been pointing toward. Not mere survival, a good land, a full table, a life sustained by God. So what do these 10 biblical meals reveal? Far more than most people realize. Lentil stew speaks of restored strength. Barley bread and oil speak of daily provision. Fish and bread speak of embodied restoration. Milk and honey speak of abundance. Figs and raisins speak of revival. Passover lamb speaks of deliverance and remembrance. Roasted grain, bread, and vinegar speak of humble provision. Pomegranate grain bowls speak of flourishing. Fish and honeycomb speak of tangible hope. And the 7 foods of the land speak of fullness under God's blessing. This was not accidental. Again and again, the Bible uses meals to reveal something deeper: strength, rescue, memory, provision, abundance, and the goodness of God made tangible. So tell me in the comments which of these biblical meals surprised you the most. If you want more videos uncovering hidden biblical wisdom, forgotten meaning in Scripture, and ancient truths that still matter today, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because there is always more hidden beneath the surface.